Today's going to be a great episode. We're going to talk about this judgment of $450 million. I mean, this could financially ruin the president, the former president, and maybe the future president. It's a historical case, the New York fraud judgment against Donald Trump, and it's unfolding in real time where we could analyze the case. He's filing an appeal, and I'm going to give you the full kind of analysis of his appeal. So stick around. It's going to be a great episode. Hello, my friends. How's it going? It's going to be a great episode. We're going to talk about this big appeal that Donald Trump is doing to the judgment of $450 million plus. And every day, Mateo, it grows by over $100,000 a day. That judgment that's a lot. In fact, by the time you finish watching this episode, right? If it's a half hour long, let's see, 110 grand. That's about $5,000 an hour. So it'll grow by $2,500 by the time you watch this. Okay, so I didn't think about it that way, but yeah. So we're going to talk about his upcoming appeal and what his odds are of winning, or what the issues will be that he has to overcome to win this appeal. Now, it's a very big deal, Zeke, right? Because we were talking about this earlier. It's a big deal because this could ruin him. He doesn't have this money, and he would have to sell a lot of assets to get this money. I mean, it's pretty bad. And we have the state of New York through a court procedure basically ruining the former president and current Republican nominee. Do you see what I'm saying? So this appeal and how there's all these different specifics about the appeal that we'll go through. I settled a case. You ever have a car that's a lemon? Yep. So it's called lemon law in California. And I'm really excited to say that I settled the case and we got this guy. He had a Jeep, a brand new Jeep. And God, that thing was so expensive. It had some problems with the seating and that's it. But they couldn't figure out why the leather in the seating was cramping and this and that. Long story short, I got him all his money back. He returned the car. He got every single penny, all the servicing. So if anyone has a lemon law issue, if you have a car, it's a new car, especially if it has a lot of problems, give me a call. 619-672-1741. All right. So this judgment against Donald Trump over $450 million. And it's crazy to me. The whole thing is crazy. And I think that the appellate court has to overturn it. They have to reverse this decision, I'm at a loss for words. Okay, and I'm going to explain what I mean here. So, broken down this judgment, the judge ordered him to pay $168 million, and let me explain why. Because Donald Trump got all these loans in the past from big banks, Wells Fargo, Ladder Bank, Deutsche Bank, and he when he got those loans, he would give them kind of what he thinks the value of his property is. This property on 40 Wall Street is worth this much. This property on Avenue of the Americas is worth this. This property in Scotland is worth that. And the court is saying, well, he overestimated the value of those properties. Had he properly estimated it, he would have probably had an interest rate of 7.5% instead of 4%. And that difference is about $168 million. You with me? That's, and by the way, and I'm going to try not to say this too many times because it just shocks me so much. All of the loans that he got, he repaid them on time, in full. And all of the banks that lent him money are not complaining. So there are no victims here. You know what I'm saying? So, but the court is saying, yeah, but had you done this, the interest rate would have been a little higher. Now that's a big deal. The difference being $168 million plus another $75 million in interest, which is kind of funny because they're asking him for that extra interest, and they're asking for 9% interest on top of all of that. And that right there is over half, or about a half. Let's see, what is that? A little less than half of this whole thing. Just that. Then there was one piece of property in Washington, D.C. they call the old post office property, where he bought the property, he did a bunch of changes, and then when he sold it, they made like $140 million, let's say. The court is saying, we want to disgorge all of that, because if you were truthful about the value of the properties that you put for collateral when you got that piece of property, maybe the banks would not have done the loan. And if they didn't do the loan, you would have never got that property. You would have never been able to renovate it. You would have never been able to make $140 million. So we want you to repay all of that to the state, not to the banks, right? Because the banks aren't complaining here. We want you to repay it to the state of New York. So that was, well, in terms of just Donald Trump, it was about $127 million plus another $20 million on interest for that. Okay, so that was also a ginormous chunk. Then he bought this, or he leased and developed a business. It's called Ferry Point in New York, these golf courses in New York. He was able to get this license agreement from the city of New York. And, he put up, properties for his collateral, and he gave estimates to the city of New York as collateral. Then he renovated, and he ran these courses, and then ultimately he sold that business to Bally's, the casino, right? And he made a huge profit. He made about $60 million. The court is saying, well, you duped the city of New York when you put up the other property for collateral. Had you given them the proper values, that deal would have went to somebody else, blah, blah, blah. So you have to repay that $60 million and another $3 million of interest. And then they nailed his kids, because that old post office, the kids each got a distribution. The Eric Trump and Donald Trump Jr., they each got $4 million, both of them. And then the court is saying, so both of those kids, they have to repay that $4 million plus interest. This is all ludicrous. The whole thing is ludicrous to me, because especially with that deal with the city of New York, what the state of New York is now saying, the court and the attorney general, is that New York City is so stupid and they couldn't figure out that Donald Trump duped them. So now the state is intervening, and then now he has to pay the state, not the city. You with me? Well, that's right. Okay. And that's why this whole thing is now going to go on. And then that's not enough. Oh, I'm sorry. There's a lot more. The state of New York, the court ruled that Donald Trump can't do business in New York for the next 3 years, and he can't get any more loans. Even though he paid back all the loans and everything. He can't get any more loans for the next 3 years. And then the two boys, they can't do any loans or anything, or I'm sorry, they can't be doing business as a director or officer for 2 years. Okay, now let's go over, there was an 11-week trial, 11 weeks, and there was no jury. Okay, so one of the points on appeal of this whole thing will be the ruling that there would be no jury. I think that that's going to be a very important issue on appeal. What the court ruled was, based on New York law, that he wasn't entitled to a jury trial. I think that one, okay, there's all these different standards in appellate law. There's what's called the de novo standard, which in Latin means like brand new. And then there's abuse of discretion. If there was a decision that the judge made that was a legal, like he interprets the law, then the appellate court will look at that without his answer. Like they'll look at it brand new, de novo. But if it's a factual finding, like he thinks, oh, this guy lied in testimony, or this guy, the appraisals were way too high, things like that. All of those findings of fact, those are an abuse of discretion standard. You like to watch football and baseball, right? So I like to say, like, if there's a call on the field, no, that guy was out. When they do the replay, they're like, it's going to stand unless it's conclusively wrong. Do you know what I'm saying? So that's the standard for factual. But if a referee or here a judge, if they make a legal ruling, so in football it would be like, oh, they didn't let the time run off after a play or something. Like if it's kind of like a rule call, then it's a different standard than like a factual finding. You with me there? That the reason why it's important is because factual findings are a lot more difficult to overcome. If the appellate court rules that there should have been a jury trial, then all of this could be undone potentially. That's a big deal. I think alone, that's not going to do it. I think there's going to be more. And I do think the appellate court, they got to reverse this, I think, in my opinion. Okay. Especially because you have one guy, the judge, no jury, that is ruining this guy's whole financial career. And who is this guy? The former president, the current nominee. I just can't see how an appellate court will rule that is fair. Although I think the reversal will be on other grounds. It won't be like if that was the only problem in this case, I don't think it would be reversed for that. Okay. Now, one of the issues here was that there was a witness named Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen used to be Donald Trump's lawyer. All right. And he testified about, conversations that he would have with Donald Trump. That it could have been what we call attorney-client privilege. And that, so that's what I mean about so the legal ruling was that he can testify about that. And when he testified, he said, yeah, Donald Trump told us to overvalue the properties. Like he would come in and say, hey, I need a valuation of $1 billion. So find a way to do it. And we would just basically look at the properties and cook the books and find a way to come up with $1 billion in assets. Okay. Now that's the testimony. So the legal ruling that he's allowed to even give that testimony, that will be reviewed de novo by the appellate court. But as to whether or not he was telling the truth and like the weight of his testimony in terms of, his reliability as a witness, that would be not reviewed de novo. That would be a kind of abuse of discretion standard in the appellate court. All right. But I'm going to kind of say what I thought was interesting that the judge ruled, because the judge is the only one that's making this decision. And he would listen to this guy's testimony. Now, keep in mind, Michael Cohen was convicted of perjury and lying to Congress and all these other crimes, and he served prison time. But the judge still found him credible. Now, that's fine. It would be the abuse of discretion standard in the sense that the judge thought Michael Cohen was telling the truth. But very, very interestingly here, the judge said, although the animosity between Michael Cohen and Donald Trump is palpable, providing Cohen with an incentive to lie, the court found his testimony credible based on the relaxed manner in which he testified, the general plausibility of his statements, and most importantly, the way his testimony was corroborated. Now, it's kind of, it pisses me off, Mateo. What upsets me is the judge didn't allow any cameras in the courtroom. But the judge is using kind of like how this guy testified, his demeanor, as part of saying that he testified truthfully. But how can we confirm that? We can't, because there was no cameras. And it's not even a situation where, okay, he didn't allow live cameras, meaning like they you could watch it in real time, the trial. And then he also didn't allow cameras where we could watch it later. So we'll never be able to see it. You see what I'm saying? So the appellate court won't be able to see it either. So they have to rely on the judge to say. Now, I think, the appellate court would say, yeah, he was probably telling the truth, and the judge thought he was telling the truth. Okay, fine. But it upsets me that I cannot confirm that myself, because there was no courtroom. There was no cameras in the courtroom. No transparency. All right, let's move on. Okay. The most important kind of, that disgorgement of $170 million, about that interest rate with the banks. Okay. Deutsche Bank, which was the biggest lender at the time for Donald Trump, they had a rule that to give him this kind of like high amount of loans and at such a good interest rate that he had to have $2.5 billion of assets. And the court painstakingly kind of looked at all of his properties and said, the way that the estimates of his properties that he gave to the Deutsche Bank was wrong. For example, he has an apartment on Fifth Avenue. Donald Trump said, it's worth this much per square foot, and it's about 30,000 square foot. And then the court came back and said, no, it's only 11,000 square feet. He overstated the square footage. Now, believe it or not, there's always arguments about how much square feet, these areas were common areas he shouldn't have included. This area was a balcony, he can't include a balcony. This was kind of a loft or whatever. Those aren't included. Sometimes stairs are included. Those square footage of the stairs, sometimes they're not. You know what I'm saying? So anyhow, but they're saying that he overvalued his particular residence. Then, and this is going to be a big issue on appeal, this judge said that Donald Trump overvalued Mar-a-Lago. Now, what was interesting, and I freaking read the whole judgment, is that the judge does not offer what the real value of Mar-a-Lago is. All right. So if the judge is going to say that Donald Trump overvalued Mar-a-Lago, he should say, this is how much it's worth. But he doesn't. Do you see what I'm saying? So the appellate court, I think, even with that abuse of discretion, I think they could nail this guy, the judge being. Okay. And this is some of my favorite parts of this that the court goes through. There's appraisals that are called like as is, and then there are appraisals that are considered as if. All right. So we have a difference between the word is and the word if. Okay. And this is what this means. A lot of the appraisals that Donald Trump's team did was what they called as if appraisals, meaning that, like, for example, Mar-a-Lago and some of these other properties, like he had a big golf course in Scotland and 40 Wall Street and, all these other properties. The way Donald Trump's team appraised those properties were as if some of the particular deed restrictions would one day in the future be relaxed, meaning Mar-a-Lago, they'll allow it to be a single family residence, or if some of the properties that he owned, the apartments had rent control on it. So they appraised all of it as if there won't be any rent control, like in sometime in the future, because they think we could sell it, and if we sell it, we could cushion it with, hey, the rent control is going to be, you could fight to get it gone, or you could fight these other deed restrictions to be gone. And this judge is saying, no, that's dishonest. You should have appraised it as is instead of as if. You with me? Don't you love it? Remember when Bill Clinton said, it depends on what you define is.
It depends upon what the meaning of the word is. Yeah.
That was before your time, Mateo. You heard that before, right? Zeke, you remember that, right? But it's true. Here, it depends. Are you appraising this as if we could get the deed restrictions, or as is the property? Now, the Joe Samo opinion is this. Why do we care? Because he paid back the banks, and the banks knew how he was appraising it, and the banks had the opportunity to appraise it themselves. And in all of these appraisals, there was language that said, don't rely on this. This appraisal could be wrong. Do your own appraisal. And they agreed with the appraisals. So to me, I can't understand. I think that the appellate court has to look at that and say to the judge, okay, you abused your discretion in the sense that you found that this was fraudulent, but the appraisals had there was like an avenue for accuracy there. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, okay, fine. Like if I bought a piece of property, let's say a vacant lot, and all I could build on there is, whatever, one house, but I want to build a gas station. Zeke, what do you think? Gas station's worth a lot more, right? So I want to build a gas station, and then I sell the property, but I value it. I'm going to put it at $8 million or whatever, saying, hey, all you need to do is fight this deed restriction and you got the freaking best gas station property around. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's how he valued it. Now, I think it's fine because the freaking bank agreed with him, right? Then the bank testified, by the way. They said this was fine. He paid the loan. Everything was cool. There's no problem. We made a lot of money on these deals. We'd love to do business with him again. And then the judge found, oh, so he defrauded you and now he's going to pay. So that is, like I said before, this is so ginormous in the sense that the court found he owes now, because he got those loans and he got them at a lower rate, he has to then repay. And this was half of this whole judgment that could financially ruin this guy. It was about $170 million. The difference in interest of what, he should have paid 7% or 7.5%, but he paid 4%, for example. And that little difference there came up to $170 million. Then the court added on interest of $75 million. So that was about $240 million. That is about half of this whole ordeal. I think that is a reversible error. And then now, just to give it a little more color about this property, the old post office, what the court did is, in addition to that difference in interest rate, they looked at that property. So he bought property in Washington, D.C. He got a loan on it. And then later he made some renovations. He did some different things to it. He put the Trump name on it, whatever. And then he sold it and made a profit of like $140 million. The court here came back and said, in addition to that change in the interest rate number, the court also said, and you wouldn't have made that deal. Like, that deal may not have happened. And therefore, all of the money you did with all the renovations and everything, and you made such a big profit, we're going to disgorge all of that, even though there's no victim and you paid the banks. So I think also that will be reversed on appeal, or the appellate court is just as bad as this judge. It's going to be one or the other, or the law. A federal court has to step in and say, okay, if this was pursuant to the law, then the law itself is an unfair taking. Because otherwise, I saw a funny meme, and that was like this guy was getting arrested because he was trying to sell his house for $600,000 when it was really worth $500,000. You know what I'm saying? Like what are we gonna do? Are we gonna go back through all of the deals that have ever been made and say, wait a minute? This person, even though the person that bought it is happy with the house and all of that, it was still an unfair deal. By the way, the Attorney General of New York had to come out and say, hey, businesses, don't worry, we won't come after you. Do business in New York. This was just Donald Trump, right? I mean, fine. You don't like the guy. You want him to go down. But to use the court system, and then for this judge, this guy here, to go along with it and not to stop it, I think the appellate court will reverse this. Okay, now with the appeals, I used to say, when I used to teach law, I would say the following. I'd say the trial is like life. You don't know what your life will be like in a year from now. Right? You don't know. You didn't know last year what you'd be doing exactly, right? So anyhow, you don't know what your life will be like in the next year. Things could happen, and people could move or go away or God forbid, die, or people move into your life. Someone leaves the job, whatever, right? You break your foot. You don't know about life. Okay. That's the trial. Then I said, when it comes to the appeal is the afterlife. And if you don't know life, you definitely don't know what's going to happen in the afterlife, right? You got a document you could give me, Mateo, that assures me what's going to happen in the afterlife? Right? No, Zeke, what do you got in your back pocket there? Oh, Zeke's pulling out a wad of $100 bills. No, I'm saying, what about the afterlife, Zeke? Right? We don't know. Okay, that's how this appeal will go. We cannot predict it, but I'm going to take some educated guesses here and kind of explain to you the process. So the appellate court is going to get all of this. They're going to get all of the testimony. And then the first kind of decisions they have to make is this. Now, the appellate court, this is what I love to say. The appellate courts take about a year to come up with a decision. So they may take 1 full year just to come up with a decision here. And then so there's going to be some haggling about what we're going to do during this year. And all these people have asked me, what's the deal with this bond? James Bond? No, the bond that Donald Trump has to put up, and he can't get a bond for $450 million plus dollars. And what's the deal with that? And blah, blah, blah. Okay, so here's the story. So the state of New York has a judgment against him for $450 million. Now, they want to do what's called execute the judgment. Execute the judgment means that the attorney general wants to take Trump Plaza, and she wants to take the property. She wants to get a lien on Mar-a-Lago and then take Mar-a-Lago, you know? That is called execution of the judgment. Now, to put that on hold during the appeal, the way to do that is that he has to come up with the money and give it to the court. So he has to give the court $450 million. And then the court holds on to that. And then they say to the plaintiff, you cannot execute your judgment because we have the money. So if Donald Trump loses the appeal, the court will give you the $450 million. That could be done a couple of ways. It's kind of the same thing when someone gets arrested. You know, that's the whole, like a bail bond. All right. This is somewhat similar. So he has to put up that $450 million in cash to the court. And then that's the bond. And then the state of New York for the next year, pending the appeal, they cannot enforce this judgment. The other option is if he goes to a bail bondsman and then that person puts up the bond. Now, it's a little different than the bail bondsman. Okay, if someone gets arrested, it's a little different and it's a lot the same because it's just an insurance company that says, we will ensure that if he loses, we have the $450 million. No, the insurance companies can do that, but they're deciding not to do that for Donald Trump. Why do you think they're not doing it? It's a lot of money, right? It is a lot of money. And to do that, they want from him a lot of money, right? What's the bail bondsman normally charge? Zeke, do you know? Why would you know? I just figured. That's why I asked you, just to get that. Come on, I know. 10%. How did you know? Okay. How did he know? I knew Zeke would know. All right. You ever been in trouble, Zeke? You could bet. Come on, this is just between us. No, just some friends of yours, right?
Your Trump episodes are never just between us.
Oh, they're never between us. Okay. All right. So yeah, it is. So when somebody they have to get a bond, they'll pay the bail bondsman 10%. By the way, the bail bondsmen don't even put up the money. This is the crazy. They just make that 10%. They don't put up the money. All it is if that guy jumps bail, then they have to put up the money. So here, the insurance company doesn't have to write a check to the court. They just give them their bond, their word. But they'll charge Donald Trump a lot of money to do that. Maybe 10%. Maybe they charge him $45 million. Maybe they charge more. My understanding is that the insurance company said, heck to the no, because we're not going to write a check for $450 million if you lose and can't pay it. You know what I'm saying? So he asked the court if he can stay the execution, all right, of that judgment of $450 million without putting it up, like without putting up a bond. A month ago, the court said, no, you have to put up the bond. That's the rule in New York. That's what everyone has to do. A month goes by, and basically the other day, this was yesterday, all right, Monday, March 18, his lawyers went back to the court and said, but we really can't put up the bond, and he doesn't have this money. What the appellate court said is too effing bad. You know, it's going to be tough because it's the state of New York that's going to get this money, and it's the state of New York that's the court. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like you're asking the state of New York not to pay the state of New York. You with me? So he's definitely not the home field advantage here. So they said, no, you have to pay it. And then yesterday's hearing, there hasn't been a ruling yet when they got back and said, well, we did our best, judges, and we really can't come up with this bond. So now the court has to either allow the state of New York to execute their judgment pending the 1-year appeal, or Donald Trump could get what's called a stay of execution. You've heard that term before, right? maybe with the death penalty cases, right? A stay of execution. In the death penalty case, the judgment is execution. And then a stay of execution is let's put that on hold, right? So here, Donald Trump is asking for, all right, before you go take Mar-a-Lago and before you take the Trump Plaza and all my, my golf courses and everything, let's just wait till the appeal is over.
Nothing is over!
But just give me a break on having to put up the bond because I tried my best. I can't get the bond. And he's trying to flirt around this for public relations. He also doesn't have the money. Donald Trump cannot write a check for $450+ million.
You know where you could get the money though?
Where's that?
Deutsche Bank.
Deutsche Bank. Ah, da, 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 da. You say that's actually funny because what the appellate court did is they did give him a break on some of the things. Remember that the judge said he can't do business in New York for 3 years? The appellate court said we will stay that part of the judgment. And the part where they said you can't get loans from the bank, the court said we will stay that part of the judgment so that he can go to Deutsche Bank. Deutsche Bank is like, hey, we've done business with this guy before. That's pretty funny. I don't think the court's going to give him a pass on that. What do you think? You think the court will give him a pass? They already didn't. Then they came back a month later and said, we really tried our best, judges, and we can't come up with a bond, and he can't write the check. So if they don't give him a pass, that's going to be interesting because then the state of New York can execute, they can start taking his property during the pendency of the appeal. But what would suck is if he wins the appeal, then he gets this property back. You see what I'm saying? It's going to be interesting to find out. I would love to hear your take on all of this.